Hello there, good evening. Welcome to North West Tonight. I'm Eleanor Moritz. Our top story. The global IT outage affects our region. Airports, trains, banks and the health service, all affected.
So unfortunately we haven't been able to process any prescriptions that come through on the online system, which again in this day and age is pretty much everything.
We'll have the latest on what's back online and what's not. Also tonight, 40 babies died, but only one has a marked grave. Now there are calls to reopen a police investigation into a former home for unmarried mothers in Kendal. Everton's takeover talks collapse. Another deal to buy the club is called off. And the Manchester band The Cortinas talk to us about why the North West has the best live audiences in the country.
What a gorgeous day it's been. I personally loved feeling the warmth on my skin. At 27 degrees, will it last?
Hospitals, airports, shops and even football clubs across the North West have all been affected today by a huge global IT outage, which has been termed the biggest ever. Well, things are now getting back to normal, but it's certainly been a day of disruption which has affected people across the region in lots of different ways. Our reporter Phil McCann. The latest, Phil.
Thanks, Lee. There is a long list of disruptions. Screens, blankets, some railway stations, long queues at our airports, and the big IT outage will have led to hair being pulled out and possibly some shouting even for people trying to buy football tickets this morning. More on all of that in a few minutes, but by far the most serious implication has been for the NHS. Yunus Muller has spent the day in Preston, where he's seen firsthand the impact it's had. Yunus.
Phil, any disruption of a vital service here is always going to be concerning, and the Royal Preston Hospital has been impacted by this IT outage across the world. I've spoken to a number of people going in and out, including members of staff, who say that doctors and nurses have been having to write things down when they wouldn't do otherwise because of the impact on their system. And that's inevitably led to some cancellations, patient records not being accessed, and perhaps even delays in appointments and treatment as well. Now, one person that I did speak to was a patient who went to see a specialist about his liver.
The system is not proper, all down.
So you had to show them the appointment, they couldn't check it themselves?
You can check me, but the system is not showing anything. Not showing my name, not showing anything. But they check me, but if they send back to some patient, they're going to send back.
What the Trust are saying, though, however, is that they don't believe A&E, for example, has been severely impacted. But the advice, of course, is if you need appointments, come here. If you feel you need treatment, do that as well. Now, what the NHS are also saying is that the impact has been on patient records and appointment systems, and particularly the majority of GP surgeries. Now, that has meant, for example, prescriptions have not been able to be handled by pharmacies across this particular area of Preston. In fact, when I went in there earlier, it was unusually quiet.
So unfortunately we haven't been able to process any of the prescriptions that come through on the online system, which again in this day and age is pretty much everything. So for the most part we've been dealing with a lot of people that's coming in, like we've had a prescription that they said the GP is going to issue, you know, like where is it ready yet? And we're like, well, we haven't received anything yet because obviously it hasn't come through. So for the most part we've been dealing with a lot of written prescription, which is like taking it back into the old days almost.
Perhaps encouragingly, what I have noticed is that the situation has improved here during the afternoon, and the same also for the hospital here across the road. So something positive to end on.
Yeah, good news at the end there, but well, very real impact for people who depend on getting their prescriptions or appointments sometimes. Well, as for the rest of the ways that our region was impacted today, let's start with travel. First of all, Manchester Airport. Some of its airlines were affected. It meant that check-in and boarding was having to be carried out manually, so you couldn't check in online. Now, the airport said that that meant there were some queues that were longer, but they said the majority of flights operating from the airport were unaffected. There had been a handful of cancellations, and they did warn that more could follow, and that's because all of the problems at other airports around the world mean passengers are in the wrong place, the planes they need to fly on are in the wrong place, the pilots that need to fly those planes are also in the wrong place. Over at Liverpool Airport, well, earlier on we were filming, so you can see, here we go, this is how it looked earlier on this afternoon. It was a similar situation to Manchester there, but a smaller airport. Airlines affected include Ryanair. Now, these are the Ryanair check-in desks, and you can see that lots of people, well, everyone in fact, is having to queue up there because, again, they couldn't check in online. Ryanair also said that they were forced to cancel a small number of flights. Other airlines affected include KLM and those that were served by Swissport ground staff like TUI. Staying with travel on the trains, there were, if you turned up to certain stations this morning, there were blank information screens, and you may not have been able to buy tickets at the stations, especially if they were operated by the likes of Merseyrail and Transpennine Express. And then away from travel, there were lots of other ways that life in the North West was affected today. If you were trying to buy, for example, from some supermarkets, including Lancashire-based Booths, you may not have been able to pay with your card. That was a bit of an inconvenience for these people that we spoke to outside a branch of Booths in Preston today.
I'm panicking because I've got no cash, but luckily I've got this. Yeah, it's unbelievable, isn't it, really? Yeah.
Well, I was told when I got to the till that it was cash only. That was it, you know, so fortunately I had enough on me at the time to pay for it.
And if you were trying to buy Manchester United tickets, well, the club was hit by the outage too. It's had to delay ticket sales for 8 of its home games for 48 hours. Similar story as well at Everton, Blackburn Rovers, Preston North End and Bolton Wanderers. They were also reporting disruption to selling tickets. So there will have been an awful lot of people for lots of different reasons affected today by this unbelievable IT outage.
Phil, thank you. And I think frustration has been the word of the day. Thanks for that. Right, let's take a look now, shall we, at some more news from around the region. And 5 Greater Manchester police officers have been suspended and 2 others put on restricted duties over allegations of racial discrimination. All 7 are based in Bury. GMP say they're deeply concerned by the claims and they've referred the matter to the police watchdog, the IOPC. People have been warned to keep windows and doors shut after a large fire involving plastics in Padiham near Burnley. An investigation is underway into the cause of the blaze at Albert Mill. At its height, there were more than 30 firefighters at the scene. And hundreds of fell runners formed a guard of honour at the funeral in Wasdale today of record-breaking veteran athlete Joss Naylor. Joss was born in Cumbria and known as the King of the Fells. He died last month at the age of 88. Athletes from local clubs ran through the valley in his honour. A work to rebuild part of Chester's famous city walls, which collapsed 4 years ago, will start next week. Agreement has finally been reached now over who was responsible. The section affected was near to the construction site of a new hotel. Well, next tonight, there are calls to reopen a police investigation into a former home for unmarried mothers in Kendal after records released recently showed more than 40 babies born there were buried in unmarked graves at a nearby cemetery. We've previously reported on allegations of abuse at the home, and a North West Tonight inquiry heard of babies born with disabilities being refused medical treatment. This report now from Katie Barnfield.
Stephen Hindley says he won't rest until he gets justice for his late wife. Back in October, we brought you Judy's story. Sent as a teenager to St Monica's unmarried mother's home in Kendal to have her baby in secret and be forced to give him up for adoption. But her son, also called Stephen, was born disabled. He was 11 weeks old when he died in her arms after being refused hospital treatment. Stephen says it was the trauma that led to her suicide.
She called herself wicked. She was guilty. She was responsible for Stephen's death, and she never got that out of her head.
Judy's baby was buried in an unmarked grave at Parkside Road Cemetery. When Stephen bought a headstone for him, he was told there were other babies from the home in the same plot. Now, thanks to his campaigning, new records have been released, laying bare the full scale of the tragedy.
Apart from the other baby that's in with little baby Stephen here, I believe there are 44 babies that are in unmarked graves here that actually died in the home.
These are a list of burial records relating to all of the infants and children who died at St Monica's, buried in otherwise unrecognised, unmarked graves.
Dr Michael Lambert from Lancaster University has been analysing previously unreleased documents from the home. He's found evidence that several other babies were denied medical treatment and allowed to die.
Presumably babies with disabilities would be seen as less eligible for adoption.
That's right, yes, because the adoptive families want a young, healthy, desirable child. Everything possible should be done to provide treatment for these babies. That's the current medical opinion at the time, and that clearly isn't happening.
Baby Stephen and other babies left to die purely because they had disabilities?
Yes.
As a result of our reporting on St Monica's, Cumbria Police opened an investigation into the home. They say so far they don't have enough evidence of criminality, but welcome further information.
Have the police been in touch with you at all about your research or anything that you found in terms of their investigation?
They haven't at all, no.
Would you be happy to give it to them if they did?
More than happy.
Stephen now wants a memorial for all the babies from the home in unmarked graves.
I want a proper burial service headed up by the bishop himself. More than that, I want any relatives that are still living, any mums that are still grieving. I want them to be the guests of honour.
The local MP, Tim Farron, says he wants the police to look further into the home and will join Stephen's campaign for a burial service.
Children who are desirable, who were, in other words, desirable for adoption, were given the modern care that was available at the time, and those who were not, were not. And that is unspeakably awful. You can't bring these babies back, but we can afford them the dignity that they so far have been robbed of.
When Judy died, I said, Judy, for all these years, you wouldn't allow me to investigate. It was too hurtful for you. And I promised I wouldn't, and I didn't. I said, but Judy, you passed away now. I'm going to move heaven and earth to get some justice for you and those other girls.
Well, I'm joined by Katie Barnfield now. And Katie, this is clearly a very sensitive subject, emotions running high there. What have those who've run the home said to you about this latest evidence?
Well, Ellie, the home was run by Carlisle Diocese right up until it closed in 1970. They didn't want to talk to us on camera, but they did give us a statement saying any suggestion babies with disabilities were given inferior care is deeply shocking and that they're looking to meet with Dr Lambert as soon as possible to discuss his findings. They say they contacted Cumbria Police after our investigation last year and remain committed to working with them. We've also heard from Westmoreland and Furness Council, who run Parkside Road Cemetery, where the mass graves are. On Stephen's calls for a burial service, they haven't committed fully to that just yet, but they say they support efforts to make sure what these babies and their families went through is acknowledged, and they've encouraged any families affected to get in touch with them.
Katie, thank you. Next tonight, the case of a man with terminal cancer whose £50,000 life insurance policy won't pay out is to be raised with the new business secretary. Sean Pinkney was hoping to cash in on the policy he's been paying into for 15 years. But there is a clause in it which means there's no payout if there's less than 18 months left on the policy. Newer forms of life insurance policies no longer include that. Well, Sean's case is now being taken up by his local MP, as Isabel Fry reports.
Sean was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, a type of bone marrow cancer, in April 2023. After getting a reminder to renew, he decided to cash out his policy, only to be told he was too late.
If I would have got cancer 6 months earlier, I would have been able to cash in. And also if I die. If I die now, I can get it.
The small print states that someone with a terminal illness can only make a claim if they have 18 months or more left. The father to four's symptoms started 6 months after that deadline.
It is absolutely ridiculous. You know, like a year and a half I've got to have on my contract in order to cash it in. But if I die, I can have it.
But Sean isn't fighting alone. His MP is taking the case to government.
We were horrified, quite frankly, that a man that was going through what he was going through was having to fight to what is essentially he should be entitled to. I'm hoping that the business secretary, firstly, will speak to the insurance industry about what's happened to Mr Pinkney, and no doubt countless other individuals across the country. carry out a form of inquiry to see how widespread the practice was, and then also make sure that individuals like Mr Pinkney receive the compensation and the insurance that they actually deserve.
Aviva stopped selling policies like Sean's over a decade ago, but being caught out by the small print is more common than not.
I have seen, unfortunately, that exact same scenario happen to one of our clients. And it's important, it's so important to read the fine print.
A spokesperson for Aviva says as Mr Pinkney's diagnosis was within the last 18 months of his policy, we're unfortunately unable to pay his terminal illness benefit claim. This is clearly stated in the policy documents. This is little consolation to the grandfather to 7 who was expecting a £50,000 payout.
You know, it's down to us to read as well, so I understand that.
What would this money mean to you and your family?
It'll pay for my funeral, and you know, my wife's not struggling when I've gone, because then there'll just be one of my lads that live here. I just cry and think I wanted it for Lyndon and my family, and now I'm not getting it. It's just so bad.
Isabel Fry, BBC North West Tonight, Salford.
Right, it's Friday, time for sport with Ian, and some big news today from Everton, and the planned takeover definitely off, it seems.
Yeah, and I think their announcement took a lot of people by surprise today, Ellie. The Texas-based Friedkin Group agreed a deal in principle to complete a takeover last month, which supporters hope could bring some much-needed stability off the field as the club looks for better fortunes off it. Well, let's now cross live to BBC Radio Merseyside and get some insight on this developing story from sports presenter Julia Bold, who knows virtually everyone at the club. Julia, I'm guessing this isn't the news many people at Everton were hoping for.
Yeah, Evertonians know to expect the unexpected, but it did come as a surprise today when that statement came out from the club saying that owner Farhad Moshiri and the Friedkin Group had decided not to complete with that takeover. And it was a shock because the American group had already paid off a £200 million loan at the club, so everyone thought it was progressing well. The issue comes down to 777, money they put into the club previously. Now, they're a Miami-based consortium that tried to take over the club, but after they missed deadlines to complete that deal and then lawsuits came their way, they stepped aside, and it's those lawsuits that have caused an issue, and the Friedkin Group believe they are too big of an issue to resolve right now. Football finance expert Kieran Maguire explains more.
Friedkin wanted to persuade 777 to take a haircut. You know, I think they're owed probably close to 200 million. They felt that they won't be going to give them that amount of money. And then there was a further issue, was that I believe Farhad Moshiri was looking for somewhere in the region of £50 million for his shares, and Friedkin were only willing to offer £1 because they felt that they were inheriting an awful lot of debt.
Julia, this will presumably worry Everton fans. What does it mean for the club's financial situation?
Well, the loan from the Friedkin Group that has been paid off means the new stadium at Bramley-Moore Dock on Liverpool's waterfront will continue. It is fully funded and that'll be completed at the end of this year. Also, it means their stance on Jarrad Branthwaite hasn't changed. We know Manchester United have been very interested in the Everton defender, but he does remain Everton's player. So the club's financial situation secure right now, and the transfer plan also stays the same. I understand there could be incomings in the next 10 days.
But it is just another chapter, though, isn't it, at Everton, with off-the-pitch issues dominating again?
It is. It's been a chapter in a long-running book, hasn't it? All the issues with profit and sustainability, relegation battles, points deductions, they have all continued. However, right now, it is seen as more of a blip for Everton because there were interested parties already wanting to take over. It's certainly something, a club that people would be interested in. Everton have played tonight over in Sligo in Ireland, but it does mean Sean Dyche will once again be asked about the ownership saga and not his own players.
Yeah, I bet he's not very pleased about that. But thank you very much, Julia. Julia Bold at BBC Radio Merseyside for us. It's a busy night in Super League. Lee Leopards host London Broncos. Salford go to Huddersfield, while Warrington Wolves, who last week beat Leeds at home, can close the gap on leaders Wigan tonight if they can beat St Helens at the totally wicked stadium.
Well, it's good weather for cricket, and hopefully it'll be a good night for Lancashire Lightning, who are back in T20 blast action against Northamptonshire Steelbacks at Emirates Old Trafford shortly. On Wednesday, they beat Nottinghamshire Outlaws by 8 wickets, with returning England duo Phil Salt and Liam Livingston both hitting half-centuries. Lancashire are already through to the quarter-finals. Meanwhile, Lancashire and England legend James Anderson is to have a street named after him in his hometown of Burnley following his retirement from the international game. The council are also considering what other steps it could take to honour the 41-year-old who retired from Test cricket earlier this month, having taken 704 Test wickets. As yet, Ellie, you've not had a street named after you. I know this because I've searched the World Wide Web, the internet, this afternoon. I've not found an Eleanor Moritz Street. I have found, though, an Eleanor Street in Wigan and a Moritz Avenue in Hong Kong and a Moritz Street in Victoria in Australia. So if we combine the two, we could get an Eleanor Moritz Street. That's unlikely, but I'm sure...
There's still time, there's still time.
Fitting tribute.
The font of knowledge. Thanks, Ian. Now, time for a bit of music for the weekend. From the Beatles to the Buzzcocks to our Oasis, our region has a long, illustrious history. It's made it famous around the world. Continuing in that tradition is the Manchester band Cortinas, one of the city's most successful popular groups of recent years. They have a new album on the way and an arena tour scheduled. Annabelle Tiffin met up with singer Liam Frey to talk about the band's loyal local fan base.
It seems ages ago now, the pandemic, but I think when that was taken away from us, that's such a big thing for us and for everyone who comes, that like when you do see it, it is probably weird. People say like scoring a goal is the best feeling. Well, when you see like people on their faces and you can see what a good time they're having, it's pretty nice to be part of that.
You have the most enormous fan base in the Northwest, don't you? I mean, sort of, somebody described it to me just before as almost a bit of a cult. They feel that strongly about you.
Right. Someone said it's like when you go to a football match but they're all supporting the same team, and I quite like that.
Yeah.
It's quite a nice feeling.
So is this where you feel most comfortable performing?
I think so. I think when we go north of the border to Glasgow, it's great, but Liverpool, Manchester have always been, amazing since the early days. You got a real sense of it in those smaller shows. We played at the Magnet in Liverpool and like Night and Day in Manchester. You could feel that like something was brewing very early. We didn't have to try that hard, they were just into it.
You mentioned the small venues, and some of them are really struggling these days, aren't they?
Yeah.
How important were they to you?
Absolutely integral. Like, we actually rehearsed at the Night and Day for like 5 or 6 years downstairs. I remember going there as a kid, and they're the beating heart of the city.
A new album out as well, because you are working with quite a lot of other artists, aren't you, on this, from other bands as well. Did you handpick them?
Yes, yeah. And I thought, well, reach out to these people that you've wanted to work with for ages, like, you know, James from the Coral and Theo from his DMAs, you know, Charlie from Blossoms is on there singing and playing bass. Brooke Combe, there's loads of people on it. I just thought, well, I've got these kind of friends in music, and you always talk about it after one of the gigs, we'll do something together. And I thought, no, let's do it then.
You've got a big gig at the Co-op Arena.
Yes.
That's November?
November 15. Yeah, November 15.
Yeah. Are you looking forward to that? It's a big venue.
I've been a couple of times. I went to watch Elbow and I went to watch Liam Gallagher. Yeah, big, brilliant. So just can't wait to get back out there. Festivals are brilliant, but when they're your shows and you can tailor your set a bit more and you can shake it up, and there's a few special things planned. I think there's going to be a different Cortina show than we've done before as well. So a few surprises in there.
Also, you're indoors, which, you know, with this delightful summer weather we've been having.
We're always so lucky with the weather at festivals. Yeah, we just get away with it.
Even this year.
Even this year, we just about get away with it. So I don't know what that's about, but yeah, it'd be good.
Brilliant. Oh, well, Liam, lovely to see you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having us. Cheers.
Yeah, lots of excitement in the office, I can tell you, when Liam Frey came in. Right, now, the weather, summer's here, for the time being at least, and so's Kay.
It was so lovely and warm walking out today at lunch. It was gorgeous. Now, we did have the hottest day for this year in England. That was in London, 31.9. For us, we got 27 degrees. We've had some beautiful pictures sent in. Here we are in Bolton. Alan went off on a bike ride. He enjoyed that warm weather. And here we are in Marple on the aqueduct. Thank you for sending your pictures in. If you would like to join us, then do join me on social media or become a weather watcher. Let me know what it's like in your part of the world. So, a gorgeous day, highs of 27 degrees. How are we doing on the old board? We got Chester was 27. In fact, it was more southern parts. Notice on the Isle of Man, I know you'll be cursing, because 17 degrees, a good 10 degrees lower than we had, but still dry across all parts. And those temperatures are going to just start to drop off because as we go through tomorrow, a cold front is heading our way. And that cold front is going to drop those temperatures down. So for the weekend, I mean, it's not a complete washout. We are seeing some rain arriving tomorrow, more especially towards the end of the day. Sunday doesn't look too bad. It's just going to feel cooler. So what's going on? What's the bigger picture? We've been pulling up this hot air because the jet stream had travelled further north. So we've pulled that up. But as the cold front starts to push in, the jet stream starts to lower, and then we lose that heat. So it's been pleasant while it's lasted. Back to the here and the now. So, gorgeous conditions. I've said on social media, it says to me a barbecue or a beer garden. Lovely conditions. As we head through this evening and overnight tonight, we are going to see more in the way of cloud rolling in. Temperatures uncomfortable. Now, we're looking at 15 or 16 degrees, similar to last night. Believe me, I had a hot water bottle last night. I know, I don't know what's wrong with me, but it will be uncomfortable for tonight. The breeze remains gentle. Now, tomorrow morning, as we head through the morning, cloud is going to thicken up. Some bright spells at first, thickening up. We're looking at some showery outbreaks of rain. Now, at this stage, timing is still uncertain. We do know that the Isle of Man is going to see that rain pushing through. Temperature-wise, it's going to be humid, 22 degrees. And the rain will sweep across all parts. But then we're into a brief ridge of high pressure in between weather systems. So Sunday doesn't look too bad. So the rain will have cleared as we head overnight into Sunday. Decent sunshine at first. Cloud will increase. Very small chance of the odd isolated shower. But for many of us, it should stay dry. We'll have lost that humidity. And temperatures, give or take, 18 degrees. It'll feel fresher.
A hot water bottle?
Partner Jim thought I'd gone mad. I'll be honest. What's wrong with me?
Don't know what to say. Thanks for watching. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Take care.